time to time, I like to take the theory of the cathedral that we've talked quite a bit about on this channel and actually map out how it works in reality, how this actually gets applied to real-world situations when we're looking at them in the news. So today we're going to look at the implications of the left owning all consensus manufacturing institutions inside the United States. We're going to look at how being able to control the flow of information in real time and the access to things like scientific data allows the cathedral to take something that the left was wrong about initially and instead actually turn it into a win, and how this allows them to consistently acquire power and punish those that oppose them. So at the beginning of our current pandemic, the progressives were actually very firmly against taking serious action. There's actually footage of doctors like Anthony Fauci saying that it's not going to be a big deal, that nobody really needs to worry about it, it's not going to be very serious, it's not going to really impact America. Now, I would love to actually play that footage for you, but as I understand, people who have done so have had their videos taken down or at the very least demonetized. And I, of course, need to be very careful throughout this video to use very particular language in order to avoid this form of censorship. Because one of the key advantages of the cathedral is being able to memory hole this kind of stuff. The left is very able to just censor their way out of actually being held accountable for positions that they used to hold. At the beginning of this whole thing, there were a large number of left-wing politicians saying, you don't need to be worried about this. In fact, being worried about this is actually racist. Because the initial reports were saying that the virus was coming from China, anyone who was worried about the virus was considered to be xenophobic. Progressive politicians were out there saying, go to Chinatown, hug the very first Asian person you see, show people you're not scared. They were encouraging large gatherings of people at the very beginning of what was going to be a very serious outbreak. Even as things seemed to worsen and the threat seemed to become more real, we were told not to panic and don't go out and get masks. Don't feel the need to wear them all the time. They have limited ability to protect you. In fact, they might even make things worse. But as the death toll started to mount in China and many European nations, it became clear that things might be very serious, and that a very big problem might be heading towards America's shores. Still, we were told that immigration must continue, borders must stay open, and any suggestion that we should limit travel from specific countries was, of course, evil and small-minded. Still, as the situation worsened, you could see the pivot start to happen. Discussion went from whether or not we should be worried as to how we should be worried. Suddenly, the dismissals of concern from the right disappeared. The left knew that a serious tragedy was going to be on its way, and now the only question became how to turn it to their advantage. The only question became, how do we use this to reward our friends and punish our enemies? Suddenly, Walmarts and abortion clinics became safe places immune to the spread of the disease, while small businesses and churches became the most dangerous places on earth. Experts made amazing claims like the fact that going to a church service made you a super spreader, but riots were relatively safe because everybody was wearing a mask. Major Democratic Party donors like Amazon, other tech giants, and big box retailers were suddenly given the excuse to actively liquidate what was left of the independent middle class in America by functionally destroying every small business in sight. Schools were shut down nationwide as a payday to unions that support the left. Teachers, of course, would continue to receive their full salary, while everybody else had to sit at home and take their pay cuts. And because conservatives and right-wingers basically now only exist as an opposition to the left, their positions on the virus were basically dictated to them by the news media. Because the media was able to pivot and move the positions that were all about safety and caution to the left, the right was now pushed into positions of opposing those mitigating behaviors. At first, Democrats mocked President Trump when he said there would be a vaccine by the end of the year. They called it impossible and said he was lying to the American people for political advantage. But now that the progressives have been pushing on the vaccine for the last few months and promoting ridiculous ideas like no one should be able to go to work or buy anything without a card showing their vaccination, the right has naturally taken the opposite position and now gets to be lumped in with the anti-vax conspiracy crowd, which of course plays directly into the left-wing narrative about the right being anti-science due to its opposition of mitigation measures and now possible vaccination. The right even ends up getting pushed into supporting things it directly opposes and knows aren't in its best interests. The right has been correctly railing about public schools for decades, saying that they are progressive indoctrination centers that teach your children to hate you, which they are. But now Republicans can't stop insisting that schools be reopened and their children once again be legally required to attend these indoctrination centers. Why? Because it was obvious that the progressives were closing them as a favor to the unions that make up their supporter base. It was very obviously primarily driven as a payday to the very groups that help keep the left in power. And so the cathedral is able to get conservatives to fight to force their kids back into this exact thing they know is terrible for them simply because their default position is now opposition to the progressives. And now, of course, the right is in a terrible place because while initially there was plenty of reason to be concerned and be cautious for certain populations because the virus was real and was dangerous, it's very clear that things have gone way too far and gotten way too ridiculous. It's very clear that they're being exploited for political purposes. The average right-leaning person knows something is wrong, but they have no one in authority to help them actually do anything about that. They have nobody with the right credentials, with the right authority to step out and say exactly what the issue is. And of course, due to the progressive stranglehold on scientific, medical, academic, and media institutions, even qualified professionals who would like to offer an opposing narrative have a hard time getting access to the data they need to even offer that explanation. This leaves the right in a situation where the only thing it's left with is a jumble of explanations that by definition don't have the tools to confirm their credibility. And these credible alternative explanations to different scenarios end up getting drowned in a sea of conspiracy theories. The right is basically denied the tools of quality control which allow it to develop a serious counter-narrative. And so we see the cathedral successfully take what was a disaster for them, being dead wrong about a very serious pandemic. And instead, they are able to turn it into an opportunity to take massive power over those that oppose them while smearing them as science deniers and conspiracy theorists. By having control of all of the consensus-making apparatus, the progressives are able to take a giant loss and instead manufacture it into one of the largest political wins, using it to unseat a president who was almost assuredly going to win and generate one of the largest power grabs of all time for their constituents and supporters. Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please make sure to hit like. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, now's a great time to do so. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or support my work through Subscribestar, you can do so through the links below the video. Make sure to check out the merch store if you want a mug or something, and don't forget to sub to my Rumble channel to make sure that you can always see my content no matter what happens here on YouTube. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.